Alright gamers, today we're going to be going over a SMITE jungle tier list. This is primarily going to be for like amateur comp, and what I think is meta, what I don't think is meta. And to start off with that, we're going to go to the assassins. The first thing first is, right now I am going to say a priority pick ban, I would say, is Kamazat's. The reason why I think Kemzat is a priority pick is that he is, for one, no one outtrades him in the early game, right? You get your 1-2 off, like, they're not winning that 1v1. He has a very strong cringe gank in duo lane, and he has a very strong, if you skip the chest camps, he has a very strong blink on the mid laner as well, can immediately kill. In the late game, he does not get weaker either. He wins nearly every 1v1 in the game if he engages it. If someone like Serket engages first, there is a possibility Serket can win it, but still, it's still a rough matchup, right? So with all this, the primary reason why this character here is a priority pick ban is because of their damage and immunity. Like, they're all damage, and they can immune while killing someone. It is very, very good. Also, even if, like, it's hard to find an opening, which it shouldn't be, you just blink 3 beads and nuke someone. Alternatively, Kamazat is also one of the best junglers at poking. You don't need to go Hydra's build. You could just go things like Heartseeker and just keep on, well, you're going Heartseeker either way, let's be honest. But you could just continuously poke them, right? So, you know, Kamazat's one of the only junglers who could do that. So for that reason, I'm putting them in priority pick ban. Is there any other priority pick ban, in my opinion? And yes, I'll need to say why. I think a priority pick ban is Ravana. I think this character is absolutely insane. A Ravana is essentially Kelly, but better. What I mean by Kelly, but better, is he's one of the gods that could continuously W key, could dive in the early game, and just 100 to 0 anyone. Similar to Kamazat, only I feel like you can hit more targets with Ravana, right? So Kamazat is slightly safer, and you can initiate with Kamazat, I guess, slightly easier. But Ravana also has the choice. I would always go Blink on Ravana, but you don't need to. You could just initiate with ult if you really want to, right? Not recommended for me, by me. I'm using Blink and Beads every time. Ravana also has a lot of good matchups. I could easily dive a Agni under tower, can immune the Agni bombs, can easily dive Discordia. There is so many characters Ravana is just good into. His damage is good. He has immunities. It's just pretty overwhelming, honestly. He could even ult over walls. Very good character. Strong in the early game for ganks. Strong, very, very strong in the late game. I don't think this character is similar to Kamazat's. They don't really have a weak point in the video game. And that's what we're going by. If they have a weak point in the video game, then I'm like, eh. But I don't really think they have a weak point. Let's see, a priority pick ban. Is there another one? Some people would argue Lance. I think Lance is slightly overrated. I don't necessarily think he's bad, right? But I do think these characters do what Lance does better. However, with that being said, you can prioritize. I feel like Lance can be played into most compositions. You shouldn't just need to draft good dive into Lance. And the thing is, there's a lot of good dive out there. So you can first pick Lance either way. It depends on your draft. It doesn't depend on their draft. There's so many good warriors. There's so many good backliners that go well with Lancelot. So for that reason, you know, you can prioritize Lance in your draft. I don't think he's as strong as Ravana or Kamazat by any means. A lot of people would disagree with me. But again, you always have to Aegis his ultimate in the late game. His early ganks are strong. Not as strong as Kamazat's, but around equal to, let's say, that of a Ravana. Also, he has a pretty insane late game too. Again, you always have to Aegis his ultimate. He has a lot of good a lot of input. He can dodge abilities with his force too. So, but the only thing is, these two characters can definitely, even through relics, take a 100 to 0 because of how safe they are or how much like time they have. Lancelot is slightly different, where he's on a more of a time limit. Like he's a bit more snappy. With that being said, let's go to our next character in this tier list. And that is going to be Thor. Now, Thor, you can find a lot of blind spots. You could 100 to 0 people. His early gank isn't the greatest, but you can still kill someone if you skip chest or maybe go to, like, most of these characters, around over 50% of the roster, Thor has a better level 2 gank as, right? And the primary thing is finding a blind spot, warding correctly, and then Thor always will force both relics, and he can still 100 0 people on top of that. If you want to prioritize, pick, or ban Thor, that's completely fine. He's a very strong jungler. I don't think he's stronger than Kama or Ravana. I think he's more similar to Lance. Also, he counters Lances too. Thor is green to Lance, so I mean, if you want, you could prioritize a Thor ban if you plan to draft Lance, or vice versa if you want to pick Thor. With that being said right there, let's see. I'm trying to think of the next quote-unquote best jungler to really show off here. And that is probably going to be, I think those are all the priority pick and bans. So let's go to someone who is super duper strong. Like, let's say Bastet, right? I think Bastet's amazing character. I don't think they're as strong as the four above. I think that Bastet does have the potential to be stronger than these two. And if you're doing and the good thing with Bastet, you could pick them into any comp. You could pick them into a front to back, and you could pick them while diving. She excels at both. Front to back, you just ult a frontliner, you nuke the frontliner. A dive, you do peekaboo and poke on cooldown, right? Very good for diving as well. Bastet ult also does a lot of damage. You may need to use both relics, or if you only use, let's say, a beads, the rest of her abilities may kill you because the 3 is going to block auto attacks. Very good versus ADCs. I would definitely say Bastet is a strong contender, primarily because of her 3. Like, at level 2, getting your 3 is so good for the jungle fight. It's also very good for the mid 2v2. Or the mid, if you want, you can cringe gank duo, or you can cringe gank the mid laner. Either way, I mean, if you really want to, you could start your 1-2 if you want, instead of your 1-3 with your cat. But your 2-3 is just stronger. I may have accidentally said 1-2 earlier. Your 2-3 is way stronger, but if you want to do your 1, let's say if they have Athena and you want to block the dash if you're cringe ganking dual lane, I mean, that's also acceptable. I think I would personally still get the 2-3 because I don't think that far ahead, but I digress. With all that being said right there, we are going to pick the next one that I think is very strong right now. I think Daji is a very strong contender to be. It's very similar to Daji, very similar to Lance and Thor, in which Daji is always going to pull beads. If you quick pull, you can 100 0 someone. If they're quick with their relics, depending on how far ahead you or they are, they do have some sort of turn potential. But with the AA cancels, I think around 7 out of 10 times you should come out on top. I think Daji is very strong right now, though, because of the quick pull, and she has a lot of good matchups. I mean, the matchups into these 4, honestly, Daji's not great into, and not great into Bastet, but the rest of the cast, like Daji into Awilix, not bad. Daji into Loki, Daji's winning. Daji's really good into a lot of backliners. The only time Daji is bad is when they have like a Yu Hong and a Cryptus, which is getting picked a lot right now, that backline. So you have to make sure that backline is banned if you are picking Daji. You cannot pick a Daji if Cryptus and Yu Hong are on the board. It's just too troll, you're not going to do anything in the video now. With all that being said about Daji, and Daji, good level, before I move on, good early game, right? A decent mid game, decent late game. It's not like she's overwhelming at any point of the video game, but I don't think she ever really falls off. She's always useful in some way. With all that being said right there, I am going to go to the next god, which is Susanoo. Susanoo completely 100 zeros most backlines, and he's really good into the current backlines. Like Hachiman, he's really good into. Yu Hong, he's honestly not that bad into, despite what a lot of people think. Raijin, he absolutely nukes. Like, there's so many backliners that Susanoo's good into. Like, Susanoo, if I'm rating them on 1v1s, he loses to majority of this cast here. But his damage is so high that he's going to 100-0 any backliner, and he's one of the best at diving these backliners. His early is in the mid tier in my opinion, but his late game is probably arguably one of the best tier, probably a top 3 for what we have on the board so far. And while I'm at it right now, I'm gonna say the next contender for strong is Serket. I don't think this is situationally strong. I think this character is very strong right now. She's just doing a lot of like, how do I explain it? You could pick her in dive and front to back. If you want to do front to back, target the frontliners. You can just ult a frontliner. You can set up for initiation. If you want, you can build it all pen. If you want, you can build it hybrid. Or alternatively, you can build her crit. You can build her Yodins into rage, into even Deathbringer immediately if you really want. And then you go Heartseeker, Titans, and all and whatnot. You can get a bubble on her if necessary. I don't think Serket has a weak point into the video game. The only thing is, sometimes it's very difficult to find an opening with Serket if you're trying to go in, if they're playing very close together. And that's when you need to target the front line. Even if, let's say, you built crit, sometimes you just have to target that frontliner if it is impossible to get to that back line. But as I was saying here, that's probably enough with Serket right there. And we are going to move on to our next contender. And I was originally going to put this one in situationally strong, but I think I'm going to put this one just in strong. I think Pelly is an absolute menace. I think she is really good in the early game, has top 3 1v1 in the early game, top 3 cringe gank in the early game. In the mid game, she doesn't fall off. She just blinks on people, immediately nukes them. You could usually go through the damage, sometimes a shell, or maybe an Athena ult or something to save someone, maybe slightly rough. But if you pre-beats it, you could go nutty, even if they have some form of, like, anti-heal on their team. I really think this character is massively underrated, and I do think this character is very, very strong. And with all of that being said there, we're going to go to the situationally strong category. Situationally strong, let's see. Well, we have Bakasura. I think Baka is very situational in terms of, you know, if they're drafting like a very aggro early game, and let's say they have a Kamazat, you're going to be giving up a lot of pressure with Bakasura. But if you could survive the first 5 levels and everyone plays very safe, right, even though they have pressure, the reason why this god is situational is that you have to survive the first 5 minutes and not get completely out macroed. If you survive that first like 5 minutes, right, and you get to your first spike, you get your ultimate, right, you get your stone cutting sword or your katana, whichever you prefer to do, I think Baka's then going to feel really, really good. If not, then, you know, Baka will still, like, absolutely demolish people with his ultimate, even if the enemies are ahead. but it may feel a bit lackluster. It may feel like you're losing the map. And that is the enemy taking advantage of Bakasura's weak level 1 through 4. A week before, you actually get some sort of spike on Baka to make him a character. The recent buffs definitely do help him. With all that being said, next situationally strong one and is Humbat. I think Humbat can be very good. I think his early game is extremely weak. I think his late game is extremely strong. I think his late, even with all his inputs, sometimes you don't have to, you could just use your ultimate, your 3, Hydro proc, and you could just immediately kill someone, right? I think this character is massively underrated. I think this probably has a top 3 jungler ultimate inside the video game. It's situational of what you want to do with your comp and who you're focusing with your ultimate, right? I think Humbat is actually one of the more challenging junglers to play. Like if you've seen that Pike's clip of him feeding, it is absolutely hilarious. Again, Humbat has a very weak early game, similar to Bakasura. Hit 1 through 4 is pretty bad. You can sometimes do things, but it's a rare occasion with Humbat, and it usually comes down to the individual skill at that point, rather than being a matchup diff. So I am going to put him in situationally strong. He has a very strong late game. Sometimes people will even ban him during the second phase because they know, hey, if we're Humbat's ulted here, we can be screwed. Humbat, while weak, doesn't have as bad as pressure as Bakasura, right? There's a couple of things. And that's why I'm going to place Humbat in situationally strong. And we are going to go to the next category over here. Or not the next category, well, the next god, I suppose. The next god here is going to be, well, we're getting to kind of the lower tiers here. But I'll say Cleo. Cleo, I think, not as strong as the characters above, but can definitely do a lot of work in certain compositions. It massively depends if if they're a pick comp, you may want to pick Cleo because they want to go and like do those corners, and Cleo is going to prevent to do those corners. Cleo, while not having the greatest early game, does compete with some of the junglers above. It's very matchup skill dependent. Cleo doesn't by any means have like a strong early, but she has really good BDK clear. She has the strongest late game jungler in the video game. She's really good when the enemy drops a pick comp. It kind of screws up their entire late game doing that. Cleo also has a very good macro. Just need to remember to go Boomba Spear on her. I've seen people go Bluestone, but if you go Bluestone, it may delay you getting really that spike. It's gonna really affect your macro. Really good objectives, pretty mediocre early game, pretty insane late game, the best late game probably in the video game in terms of junglers, and those are her spikes. A macro god that can contest some gods early in skill dependent matchups. For example, you could say Serket is a skill dependent matchup before she gets her crit online. You could say Susanoo, if you're continuously poking and you're going through walls because Susan sometimes have to immediately drop ultimate, it's very, very skill dependent. Beats Hunbat and Bakasura also in the early game. Doesn't lose every 1v1, but probably can't win 1v1s into Camazotz, probably can't win ones into Lancelot and whatnot. With the next character on the board, and this is a highly situationally strong one, but I am going to put Fen in situationally strong. If they have something like a Hebo or a Thoth, you just 100 to 0 them. But I think Fen can really only be picked probably last in a draft. Super situational, can definitely be picked if the enemies choose specific gods. Can either die, but if you're going like dive in full power, you're gonna really want Hydra's Lament. because you may have to cancel your 3 for quick auto attacks, because then, even though he does a lot of damage with his scaling, he could just easily be screwed if you have, because due to his long animations. And with that being said, that's primarily the only reason why I'm doing situationally strong. It's not for your comp, it's for their comp, and it's the gods they choose. Very rarely will you see a Fen get picked. Bruiser wise, right now, I don't think his bruiser build is that strong. I would go full power with him. However, I would also probably only pick him in certain situations. And with all of that being said right there, it is time to move on to the next god, which the next god here is another situationally strong one. No, it is not a situationally strong one. It's actually a strong one. It's one that is massively underrated. Give everyone a moment. That's it. Because I dropped something right now, I'm trying to pick it up since I'm silly. Okay. And with all of that being said, the next one that I am going to put up there, and usually I only put one of these two gods up here, but it's going to be Ratatasker, right? Now, I was debating while I'm putting Ratatasker here or here. I was really debating, but I'm going to put Ratatasker probably up here. The reason being is Rat has a very good early game. He has good cringe ganks. He wins some matchups. He loses other matchups. It's just, this god, I feel like, is usually a flavor, and not a lot of people are playing him right now. At least in jungle. I do think his better role is solo by far. I think tanky Ratatasker is the way to go usually. You could build him full power and nuke the back line, but in the late game it still becomes very difficult. There's a lot of junglers who can do what Ratatasker does, but a lot better. For example, Thor could dive the back line a lot better than Ratatasker in the late game and live with full power. Lancelot can do it a lot better. All these characters here can do it a lot better. And almost every character here, maybe besides two of them, can do it to the same degree or arguably better. But we're talking about spikes, Ratatasker, really good early game spike. Really insane mid game spike. The late game, if you're going bruiser, you still have an insane late game. However, if you're going power, Ratatasker does slightly fall off, which is a problem. That's when you have to split lanes and you have to do all this bull with Bastet, not Bastet, with Ratatasker to maintain your presence in the video game. With all that being said here, I am going to the next jungler, which is going to be a Wheelix. I think a Wheelix is a situationally strong pick. I think a Wheelix is probably the highest on the situationally strong. And the reason why I'll put him strong, I don't think you need knockups on your team for Wheelix to be good. But I feel like a lot of the ones she should be winning in the early game right now, she's not winning. Because her entire gimmick originally was that she was a strong early game god, and then she moved to a mid game god. And you know, you could still, there's a couple of tricks to do with a Willix, right? If you have Arendite, you ult prior, you blink, you start autoing someone down, you can immediately kill them, right? But I feel like they're just gods who just do that better, right? I feel like she's also very good in the front to back. She can either dive the front line or the back line, or just hit the front line alternatively, or ult someone to their team. If you are drafting, if you're drafting a Wheelix, there should primarily be a reason. I don't think she should be, I think a Wheelix should be a god that you should draft around, even though you necessarily don't have to. For example, I think having a Sobek on your team makes this character like super super strong. But if that if a Wheelix doesn't have a Sobek or someone like that, I feel like she's just good. So you know what I mean in that aspect. But yeah, that is why I am putting a Wheelix where I am right now. With all of that being said, it's time to move on to the next character. And the next character is going to be some of the first ones over here. I think Loki is a very good character, very underrated, and I feel like Loki can do a lot. He doesn't usually win jungle 1v1s in the early game, in my opinion, for the couple of first levels, but I think he's really good with diving, let's say. Actually, I'm going to play him situationally strong because he is exceptionally good at diving Yu Hong. And I think with Yu Hong being picked up right now, Lucky is a fantastic pick into Yu Hong. He doesn't win any jungle 1v1s in the early game. Very skill dependent, mostly, but I don't see Loki beating most of these characters. Maybe Thor if Thor misses an ability. Maybe a Wheelix if Loki gets the first hit. Maybe Bakasora pre-level 5. Maybe Hunbat's. But these are like ones that he's expected to win. I do think that Loki also has a pretty good 1v1 into Susanoo, which is usually wins a lot of one. Well, not wins a lot of ones. Susanoo also struggles with ones, just diving backline. So out all the junglers that winning ones, Loki's probably like the Dami mommy of the group, right? I think Loki completely obliterates. So I'll put Loki in situationally strong as well. I'll put them above Ben, above Cleo. I think right here is a good placement. With all that being said, it's time to move on to just good. I think very controversial. I think not just good. Even if you have a good raw doesn't need setup. I think Naja has a decent level 2, a decent game, decent all around. I don't think Naja is going to carry a game. I think Naja is going to be a staple. The Sash could certainly be strong. Relics kind of screw Naja over, as well as Magi's kind of screws Naja over. And Naja could easily die if anyone pre-beads, can easily die to someone with Magi's. I feel like there's just too many things in the video game that kind of makes Naja like hard to play. And that is the only reason why I'm playing Naja. Just good. Right? But again, also, a lot of these situationally strong characters, like Fen, would be down here if it wasn't like their situational strongness. Same with Humbatru. But we are going to go to our next character for here, which is Tsukiyomi. I think Tsukiyomi is okay. I think Tsukiyomi is good at diving, but I think he's one of the worst junglers. Like, out of all the junglers that could dive, I think Tsukiyomi has the highest risk and one of the lowest rewards. And I feel like sometimes he's just forced to initiate, and that just doesn't feel good as a jungler. Unless you're Ravana or like Hamzat and have like that crazy immunities. But with that being said, that's the real reason why I'm playing Suku there. Just ages completely screws this character. Definitely still stunned lower status players. But I feel like against good players, Tsukiyomi is just good. He's just he's okay. Now, before I finish, I'm gonna put all non-meta. I'm not gonna really explain why that much I'm playing all these characters non-meta. They're just not that great at the video game right now. One of them's slightly controversial, but we'll go through them one by one. Uh, Thanatos. Thanatos is supposed to be a really good early game character. Used to have the best early game. Currently gets out 1v1 by every jungler in the video game. High risk, low reward in the late game. If you get if you do a plate cleanup, but that's really the only thing you could do with Thanatos, then you could possibly, who knows, opt for a pentakill. But other than that, even if you blink on someone, especially Thana used to like jungle 1v1. You blink, you won, although you're not killing, they're going to outdamage you. Majority of junglers will outdamage you. Maybe not Naja, maybe Tsukiyomi may struggle if you both use your beads, but besides that, I don't think Thana's that good. Because I feel like a lot of Thana's a snowball character, and he's not going to get that lead in the early game right now to really make him that presence he should be. I also think late game is the reward rate for Thana isn't that great even when he's snowballing. I feel like he's a very easy target. I feel like your force blade cleanup, it just doesn't feel great. Arachne, really good in metas where it takes a while to, like, very tanky metas where you want to target the front line. Right now, a couple of abilities will kill someone. The TTK is very, very low. So, Arachne is a bad unplayable character. A similar thing applies to Set, just anti-heal and how long it takes him to kill someone. He wants to be running around the back line, and you really can't do that right now with Set Jungle. I don't think it's really stable. With all that being said, let's go to our last three characters. Kali, I'm gonna just say Kali's good. Uh, Shell kind of hurts Kali, and Kali, it's very difficult. You have to build your movement speed, kinda, and it's very difficult to get near people. I feel like there's a lot better junglers who can find like opportunities way easier than Kali, and I feel like the reward rate just isn't that good because when gods like Shuket are meta as well, it makes Kali very difficult to play. A lot of junglers can also survive Kali off of them. They can gain the distance usually, and into five people, Kali has a very hard time fighting into five people because you have a timer how long it takes to kill someone, and usually Kali struggles doing that. But with that being said, I'm putting her at the bottom with good. I believe Mercury, great pub stomper, right? You're opening out lanes, you're killing people immediately. Struggles to find people in the late game, just blink autoing people, but you could do that with most characters, right? So with Mercury, you're just like trying to snowballs, ulting down lanes, which can be slightly annoying, can get a good snowball lead. What Thanos should be, but sadly isn't. It has some setup in his kit for level 2, 3 for ganks. Doesn't have the worst ganks, doesn't have the best ganks. And in the late game, kind of struggles to do anything. And a late game dominant pick like Mercury, you don't want to be struggling right now. And with all that being said, it's time to put Nemesis. Probably, I would put her at the top of good. I may be underrating her. I just don't feel a reason to really pick her. She's a staple in mostly everything she does. Sometimes she'll struggle diving and she'll get nuked. If she has a lead, she's very difficult to play against. She has a solid level 2. She has a solid level 3. Her level 5, in my opinion, is a lot weaker than other characters, but that's fine. She can find opportunities. It's not the hardest to gain distance versus people. But again, her damage isn't fully there, and it just doesn't feel like a Nem meta. I feel like Nem's meta, usually when people are very tanky, and you could play her as that, well, I'll continuously poke you with the 2, then I'll ult you and my team will kill you. You can't really do that well right now. I feel like her poke is very insignificant. And with that being said, maybe I'll put her actually with the new duality build. I feel like she's still up there. It really made her damage not that terrible. I've seen some people go the new Stonefence or Ichabod on her and win some ones early. But again, these are very rare scenarios. You're not seeing this very often. So for that, I'm probably putting Nemesis. I think Nemesis is better than Suku. I think it's worse than Naja. I actually think Mercury is probably, I don't know, probably worse than Tsukiyomi. I think Mercury is a very bad overrated character. And with all that being said, it's time to go to the Warriors. And I'm not going to go through them all because I don't think they're really worth it. But I'm placing most of these just in good because I don't think that they're great right now. Good, good. I think all these characters are playable, just not great. Situationally strong depending on what you're playing against. I feel like Suitor is one of the worst junglers in the video game. I feel like Mulan's actually playable in jungle, very underrated. King Arthur, Now, I've seen people playing jungle like a month ago. Please don't play this character jungle. Uh, yeah, something like this looks good. Where a lot of these warriors can be played jungle. And they could do a good thing in jungle, right? But there's just alternatively just better picks in my opinion. Right? You could play a lot of warriors in jungle, build them hybrid, and they could do okay. Yeah, I'll say that. I don't think these characters should be jungling. Now we have hunters, any jungle ADCs. You can say Apollo's honestly, low-key, not that bad. Apollo like up here. Good for front to back. And with that being said, I'll put this one, and I'll put. Is this draw like Aramis? All right. Now, with all that being said, here. Oh wait, can't forget these fun picks here. Time for the mages. Okay, these are real ones here. Chang'e, I just don't think it's meta in the jungle right now specifically. Just doesn't do enough early. Doesn't pop off enough in the late game. You can look for blink ultimates. Takes too long to get online, in my opinion. Has really bad BDK fights in jungle, and yeah, that's why they're a bad jungler right now. Let's see. Anubis. No, I've seen this in ranked games, please, and in some comp settings. Situationally strong. I'm gonna put Izzet. My mom would be situationally strong in my opinion. Not going to elaborate further because I am honestly tired. I should. I'm not going to. Long, also very, I feel like situationally strong. And with that being said, this is the jungle tier list right here, boys. Not meta, is, I'll say, playable. Not meta, playable, situationally strong, and priority pick ban. In my sets, anything below situationally strong should not be picked, right? If I see you on any of these characters, I just don't personally take it that seriously. I don't think these characters are that good. I don't think the not meta characters are good. Anything above this, good. Anything below this, frowny face. Oh, well, that's the tier list. GG's. I'm not sure why I said GG's, but have a good day, everyone.